Imagine this. You're waking up, but not in your bed, not in a warm room with soft sheets wrapped around you. A cold wooden deck presses against your back. The smell of salt fills every breath you take, and beneath you, beneath your entire body, there is motion, life, living motion. You're on a ship, a Viking ship, somewhere in the middle of the North Sea. It's around the year 993, perhaps a little later. The exact date doesn't matter much here, in this moment. What matters is that you're cold, deeply, fundamentally cold. Your fingers are stiff, your teeth chatter. Around you, 60 other men are scattered across the deck in various states of sleep, if you can even call it sleep. Some of them are awake already, moving quietly. Others are still struggling against the cold and the motion. You hear breathing, lots of breathing, deep, labored breathing mixed with the constant creaking of wood and the eternal sound of waves hitting the hull. This is your reality now. This has been your reality for weeks, and you wonder, how much longer can you survive like this? Most people, when they think of Vikings, imagine fierce warriors in dramatic battles. But the truth is far less glamorous. The truth is much quieter, much colder, much more human. If you love stories about the past, if you're curious about how people truly lived hundreds of years ago, please subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And in the comments, tell me, would you survive on a Viking ship? What frightens you most about the ancient world? This is the story of one ordinary sailor, one of 60 men crammed into a wooden vessel no larger than a school bus. A ship that was built by hands whose names history has completely forgotten. A ship that might carry you across an entire ocean or might never reach land again. We find ourselves in what historians call the Viking Age, a time when Scandinavian men sailed farther than anyone thought possible. They weren't just raiders, though they certainly raided. They were explorers, traders, settlers. They were dreamers in their own way. But this is not a story about conquest. This is not a story about triumph. This is a story about endurance, about what happens when an ordinary human being finds themselves in extraordinary circumstances, about the invisible strength we don't know we have until we absolutely must find it. Here's what might surprise you. The Vikings thought all of this was completely normal. They didn't complain, or if they did, their complaints were written down nowhere. They accepted the cold. They accepted the hunger. They accepted sleeping on bare wood surrounded by unwashed men. And somehow they survived. More than survived. They crossed entire oceans. They established settlements in places where survival seemed impossible. How? That's what we're going to explore together, slowly and carefully, as you drift deeper into this story. That's what we're going to discover. So settle in, get comfortable wherever you are, take a deep breath, and let me tell you what it was actually like to wake up on a Viking ship in the year 17 or so. The first thing you feel when you wake is the cold, not a mild chill, not the kind of cold you experience when you step outside on a winter morning. This is a different kind of cold. It's a cold that has penetrated every layer of your clothing. It's crept into your bones. It's settled into your very being, making you question whether you'll ever feel warm again. You open your eyes slowly, very slowly. The sky above you is gray, not a pale gray, but a heavy, thick gray that seems to press down on everything. Clouds hang low, so low that you feel like you could reach up and touch them. The light is weak, early morning light, the kind that barely constitutes daylight at all. It's early May, perhaps, or late April. The North Sea during this season doesn't offer warmth, but at least the darkness doesn't linger quite as long as it does in winter. You see the wooden planks of the ship's deck beneath you. They're worn smooth in some places and rough in others. The wood is dark, stained with salt and weather, and things you probably don't want to think too carefully about. Along the sides of the ship, the gunwales, you can see the overlapping planks that make this vessel special. This is clinker construction, a building technique that allows the ship to flex and move with the waves, to bend without breaking. Around you lie men. Some are still sleeping, their bodies arranged along the benches that serve as both rowing seats and beds. Some have risen already and are moving quietly about their morning tasks. Their beards are long and matted, their hair is tangled with salt and wind and time. Off to one side, you can see the mast, a massive wooden pole that rises up through the fog toward the hidden sky. From it hangs the sail, currently furled and slack. The ship moves by rowing today. The wind isn't right, or perhaps the captain wants to conserve the sail. Salt, overwhelming, inescapable salt. It's not just in the air, it's soaked into every inch of this ship. It's in the wood, it's in the ropes, it's in your own clothing, which has been exposed to salt spray for weeks now. You smell it in every breath. But there are other smells too. The smell of fish, dried fish and preserved fish, and fish that's been sitting in barrels for longer than you want to think about. The smell of human sweat, unwashed and accumulated over many days. The smell of wool that's been saturated with seawater and then left to dry in the sun, only to be saturated again. These smells have become so familiar that you barely notice them anymore. And then suddenly, you notice them very acutely. There's a subtle smell of smoke, too, though there's no fire. It comes from the small cooking brazier that's carefully maintained in a protected corner of the deck. The smell of burning charcoal mixed with whatever was last cooked over it. Probably fish. Definitely fish. The ship itself is never silent. Even in this moment of near stillness, it creaks and groans. The wood is speaking to you, expressing the constant strain of holding 60 men and their supplies while floating on water that wants to push it in every direction at once. The waves. You've stopped consciously hearing them, but they're always there. A rhythmic sound, water hitting wood, then receding, then hitting again. It's become something like a heartbeat, the heartbeat of the ocean, the heartbeat of this ship. Around you, you hear breathing, dozens of men breathing, some snoring. One man nearby is coughing, a deep, wet cough that he tries to suppress but can't quite manage. Another man is whispering something to his neighbor, something you can't quite make out. The ropes creak, the sail flaps slightly. In the distance, you might hear a seabird, though it's far away. These ships don't have birds circling them very often. When a bird appears, it means land is close. Your skin is cold. Your fingertips are almost numb. When you rub them together, you can barely feel the motion. Your nose is cold. Your ears are cold. There are parts of your body that haven't been truly warm in weeks, and you're beginning to wonder if they ever will be again. The wooden deck beneath you is hard and unforgiving. You can feel every grain of wood through the thin layer of wool that covers it. Your bones ache from pressing against this hardness night after night. You shift position, hoping to find somewhere that doesn't hurt quite so much. But there is no such place. Your clothes are damp, not soaking wet. They've mostly dried from yesterday, but there's a persistent dampness to them that cold water spray and high humidity have created. When you pull your wool tunic tighter around yourself, you can feel the dampness. It doesn't insulate. It actually makes you colder. Fear. That's the primary emotion. A kind of low level, constant fear that you're starting to recognize as just part of existence on this ship. Fear that the weather will turn worse. Fear that you're lost. Fear that you'll never see land again. Fear that this cold will become permanent, that you'll never feel warmth again. But underneath the fear, there's something else: resignation, acceptance. This is your life now. You accepted it when you signed on for this voyage. You accepted it every single morning you wake up. And tomorrow morning, you'll accept it again. There's also a strange kind of purpose. Millions of men are not on this ship. Millions of men are in warm beds right now, or working in fields, or sitting in taverns. But you are here. You were chosen, or you chose to be here, and somehow that matters. In the modern world, you wake in a bed with a firm mattress designed to support your spine. You have blankets, real blankets made of synthetic materials that trap heat efficiently. Your bedroom is probably not cold. It might be climate controlled to the exact temperature you prefer. On a Viking ship in the year 1000, you wake on bare wood, sometimes with nothing between you and the planks except a thick woolen bag that two men have to share. Your blanket is a wool cloak that's damp most of the time. Your bedroom is an open deck exposed to wind, spray, and the constant motion of water. Today, if you're cold, you can make yourself a hot drink. You can put on more layers. You can move to a warmer room. On a Viking ship, if you're cold, you stay cold. You might get closer to the cooking brazier if you're lucky, but there isn't much warmth to find. But here's what's remarkable: human beings are not as fragile as we think we are. The men sleeping around you right now, men who have been exposed to this cold for weeks, they're not dying. They're not going mad. They're not breaking down. They're adapting. Their bodies are learning to survive. Their minds are learning to accept. And when you wake up on a Viking ship and feel that cold, you understand something fundamental. Comfort is not a necessity. Survival is. The first task of the morning is always the same: water. Water is life on a ship. Without it, a crew dies in days. More people die of thirst than of hunger, and the captain knows this. Everyone knows this. So every single morning before anything else happens, the water situation is assessed, managed, and carefully distributed. This is the rhythm that governs all life aboard this vessel. You make your way to the water barrels, massive wooden containers that sit secured on the deck. These barrels are large, taller than you. They hold hundreds of liters when they're full, but they're not full anymore. They're somewhere around three-quarters full, maybe less. How many days has it been since you last made port? 6 days? 7? The water inside is not clear. It's a pale brown color, slightly opaque. When you peer into the barrel, carefully, because it's dangerous to lean over the edge when the ship is moving, you can see things floating in it. Salt, maybe something that once was alive and isn't anymore. But it's water. It's precious. The other men gather around too. They're efficient about it. Everyone gets their portion. You watch as the sailor in charge, a grizzled man whose name you've never quite learned, carefully measures out approximately 1 liter for each person. It's not much, but it's carefully calculated. 4 liters per person per day is the standard, and the captain takes that very seriously. The water smells of barrel wood and age. There's a faint metallic tang to it, probably from whatever metals are involved in the barrel construction and bindings. There's the smell of salt, which the water has absorbed despite being fresh water. There's also something else, something slightly sour, slightly organic. The water has been sitting for days, and small things are beginning to grow in it. Nothing dangerous, probably, but certainly not pleasant. When you drink, the smell is stronger in your nostrils. It's not appetizing, but thirst overrides any sense of disgust. The sound of water sloshing as the ship moves, the sound of the wooden cup being filled, the sound of men drinking. Some drink slowly and carefully, others gulp, desperate for liquid. The captain watches to make sure no one takes more than their fair share. There's the sound of the ship's movement, too, a rhythm that never stops. Creak, sway, creak, sway. The water in the barrels moves with the ship. You can hear it shifting inside the wooden container. The water is cold, not ice cold, but definitely cold. It startles you slightly as it touches your lips. You cup your hands around the wooden cup and drink slowly. The water passes down your throat. It's not refreshing exactly. It's too brackish for that, but it's necessary. It's something. Your hands are shaking slightly as you hold the cup, partly from the cold, partly from the exertion of moving around on the shifting deck. You're tired. You didn't sleep well. The noise, the cold, the constant motion, they all conspire to make real sleep nearly impossible. Gratitude, strangely. You're grateful for this water. You're grateful that the captain maintains discipline about the supply. You're grateful that you haven't yet reached the point where water rationing becomes so strict that men begin to suffer from thirst. There's also anxiety. What if the weather turns bad? What if it takes longer to reach the next port? How many days can this water last? If the supply runs out before you reach land, what happens then? But beneath both of those emotions is something you've come to recognize as the fundamental state of existence on a Viking ship: acceptance. This is what life is. This is what you must do. You drink your water. You move on. Today, most of us drink water from a tap. We fill a glass, and water appears instantly. If we're thirsty in the middle of the night, we can get a drink. If we're thirsty while driving, we can buy water at a store. On a Viking ship, water is rationed. Water is precious. Water is something that must be carefully managed, guarded, and distributed fairly, or the entire crew will suffer. In the modern world, if the water supply becomes contaminated, we test it and throw it out. On a ship, you drink it anyway. You hope it doesn't make you sick. You continue with your work. The men who lived on Viking ships understood something we've largely forgotten. Water is not just something you drink. Water is survival. Every liter is life extension. Every person who gets their fair share is another day the ship can stay at sea. Every careful measurement is a decision about who will make it home and who might not. This is why the water ritual is so important. It's not just practical, it's spiritual. By the time you've dealt with the water, your stomach is demanding attention. Breakfast on a Viking ship is not a meal you look forward to. It's not something you enjoy, but it's something you need, and the ship's routine accommodates that need with grim efficiency. Always simple. There are no choices. There is only what there is. The cook, if you can call him that, since he doesn't actually cook very much, is preparing what passes for breakfast. He's a thin man with weathered skin, and he moves with the careful precision of someone who's been doing this job for a very long time. The main offering is dried fish, hard, dense, almost unrecognizable as fish anymore. It's been preserved through drying in salt, and it's been sitting in barrels for weeks. The pieces are small, a palm-sized portion for each man. The color is almost black. The texture looks almost like wood. There's also bread, hard bread, the kind that's been baked weeks ago and has had time to become rock solid. It's dense and dark, and breaking off a piece requires actual effort. You'll have to soak it in water or broth to make it soft, enough to chew properly. And there's a small amount of butter, rancid probably, but still fat, still calories, precious calories. It's spread thin on the bread, just enough to add a little flavor and richness to an otherwise austere meal. The smell is not appetizing. The fish smells like salt and preservation. The bread smells musty, like it's been stored in damp conditions. The butter smells slightly off, not rotten exactly, but definitely not fresh. But to your current self, cold, tired, and hungry, these smells are almost divine. They promise energy. They promise that you might survive another day. The sounds of men eating. It's not quiet or orderly. It's the sound of hungry men consuming food, hard bread being broken, teeth working on tough fish, the occasional grunt of satisfaction, someone coughing as a piece of bread goes down the wrong way. The ship's rhythm continues underneath, the constant creak and sway, the sound of water against the hull, the distant cry of a seabird. The bread is hard, almost impossibly hard. When you hold it, you're holding something that requires genuine effort to break. When you finally get a piece into your mouth, it's like chewing leather. You have to work at it, have to soften it with saliva, have to put real effort into breaking it down enough to swallow. The fish is flaky when you get it apart, but it's also dense. It's salty, extremely salty. It makes you thirsty, which is why it's paired with the rationed water. The fat in the butter coats your mouth slightly, making everything feel a bit more satisfying, even though the food itself is quite plain. Hunger. That's the baseline emotion here. A constant, low level hunger that never quite goes away. You eat. You feel briefly satisfied. Then, within a few hours, the hunger returns. There's also a strange kind of gratitude. You're grateful that there is food. You're grateful that the captain maintains supplies well enough that everyone eats something day. You're grateful that you're not starving. And underneath both of those, there's something like resignation. This is what you eat. This is what everyone eats. This is how it works. Get used to it. In the modern world, breakfast is something people spend time thinking about. What will I have? How will I prepare it? Will I go out for breakfast or eat at home? The choices are almost overwhelming. On a Viking ship, breakfast is this: hard bread and hard fish and a little bit of butter. Every single morning. There are no choices. There is no deliberation. There is only this. People today often complain about breakfast. They're bored with their cereal. They want something more interesting. On a ship in the year 1000, the question isn't, is this interesting? The question is this enough calories to keep me alive? Food on a Viking ship serves one purpose and one purpose only. It's not about flavor. It's not about enjoyment. It's about raw calories in a form that won't spoil during weeks at sea. And the remarkable thing is that this simple food actually works. It doesn't make people sick very often. The salt preserves the fish. The dryness of the bread keeps it from molding. And somehow, men who eat this diet day after day remain healthy enough to row a ship across entire oceans. After breakfast, there's little time to rest. The wind isn't favorable today, which means the ship will be rowed. Rowing on a Viking warship isn't work like other work you might have experienced. It's not something you do for a few hours and then stop. It's a rhythm. It's a meditation. It's the very heartbeat of the vessel. When the captain calls for the rowing to begin, everyone knows what that means. You move to your position on the rowing bench. You know exactly where you belong. You've been assigned the same bench, the same position, for the entire voyage. Your benchmates are the same men who've been beside you for weeks now. You know them by their silhouette. You know the sound of their breathing. You're bound together by proximity and necessity. There are 18 benches on this ship. 3 men sit on each bench. That means 54 oarsmen plus a small crew for navigation and sail management. The benches are arranged in two rows, one on each side of the narrow hull, leaving a central walkway for the steersman and the captain. Your seat is a wooden bench, nothing more. Below it is a sea chest, a container where you and your two benchmates keep your personal possessions. That chest serves a dual purpose. During the day, it's a place to store things. During the night, it might become a place to lean or to rest part of your weight when exhaustion becomes overwhelming. The oar itself is large, much larger than you might expect. It's a long wooden pole, thick at the base where it's gripped, tapering as it extends toward the water. At the far end is a wide, flat blade, designed to catch water and push the ship forward. When you grip the oar, your hands know the exact position. They've done this thousands of times now. The wood is worn smooth in places, rough in others. There are splinters, but your hands have calloused over them. The pain is just part of the experience. When the captain gives the signal, usually a sharp whistle or a shouted command, something remarkable happens. 60 men, acting as one organism, begin to move. The oars enter the water in perfect unison. The sound is like a single massive heartbeat. Splash creak, splash creak, splash creak, over and over and over. There's a chant sometimes. A rhythm keeper, usually the strongest or most experienced rower, will call out a tempo, and the men will follow. 1, 2, 3, pull. 1, 2, 3, pull. The sound of the chant blends with the sound of the oars and the water and the creaking ship into something that's almost hypnotic. When men sing while rowing, and they often do, the voices are rough but coordinated. You might hear an old Norse work song, the words barely audible over the water noise. The song isn't meant to be beautiful, it's meant to keep the rhythm steady. Rowing is not gentle, it's brutal. Your arms burn within the first hour. The muscles along your shoulders and upper back are screaming. Your hands, despite their calluses, are beginning to develop blisters where the oar rubbed yesterday. But you pull. You keep pulling. Because if you stop, the whole rhythm breaks. Because the man next to you is counting on you. Because if everyone slacked off, the ship would barely move. By the third hour of rowing, you've entered a strange state. The pain is still there, but you're no longer thinking about it very much. You're thinking about rhythm, about timing, about moving when the other oarsmen move, pulling when they pull, recovering when they recover. Your legs are pushed hard against the foot brace, a wooden platform that allows you to put the power of your legs into the rowing. You lean back with your whole body, then push forward, back, then forward. It's a full body movement, not just your arms. The ship moves. With 60 men rowing in unison, a Viking warship can actually achieve surprising speed. For hours, you maintain this rhythm. The day passes. Your awareness narrows to the immediate moment, to the water, to the oar, to the man pulling next to you. There's a strange kind of peace in this. Your mind, which has been anxious and uncertain, finds rest in the monotony. There's nothing to think about except the next stroke. There's nothing to worry about except maintaining the rhythm. It's also extremely lonely. You're surrounded by men, pulling in perfect synchronization with them, but you're not really connected to them in this moment. Everyone is lost in their own physical experience. Everyone is fighting their own pain and exhaustion, and underneath it all, there's a kind of pride. You're part of something larger than yourself. 60 men working together, moving a massive wooden vessel across the ocean. That's remarkable. That's powerful. That's something to be part of. In the modern world, rowing is exercise. It's done in climate controlled gyms on machines or on calm rivers with proper equipment. It's done for fitness, for sport, for recreation. On a Viking ship, rowing is survival. It's not exercise. It's the method by which you move the ship toward your destination. Every stroke is necessary. Every stroke is part of the larger purpose, and the duration is incomparable. Modern rowers might row for an hour or two. Viking sailors might row for 6, 8, 10 hours per day after day, week after week. What becomes clear through rowing on a Viking ship is this: human beings are capable of far more than we think. The body adapts, the mind adapts. What seems impossible on the first day becomes routine by the third week. And more than that, when people are united in a common purpose, when they're working toward a goal together, something remarkable happens. The individual suffering becomes bearable, the exhaustion becomes manageable, the pain becomes just information about how hard you're working. Rowing stops as the sun sets. The light fades gradually. At this time of year and this latitude, twilight lingers for hours before true darkness falls. But eventually, night arrives, and with night comes a different kind of challenge. This is when the ship changes character. This is when, despite being surrounded by 60 other men, you feel utterly alone. The sun sinks toward the horizon. For a few minutes, the sky is spectacular, a gradient of colors from deep blue to orange to gold to red. If you had the energy and the perspective to appreciate it, it would be beautiful. But you're tired. So tired, you barely notice. The temperature drops. There's no gradual shift here. As soon as the sun passes below the horizon, the warmth of the day, what little there was, is gone. The cold returns with a vengeance. The stars emerge one by one. This far north, in this season, the stars are impossibly bright and numerous. They're different from the stars you remember from your childhood home. Everything about this journey is different. The captain checks his course by the North Star. That constant, unmoved star has become almost like a guardian figure. As long as you can see the North Star, you're still on your intended path. As long as the North Star is there, you're not completely lost. You move to your sleeping position. There's a specific place for you on the narrow deck. You've claimed it over the weeks, a small space between your rowing bench and the hull. The deck is hard. It's damp. It's not comfortable. But it's where you'll spend the night. If you're lucky, you have a sleeping bag, a hoothfat made from animal hide stitched together and lined with wool. It's a simple thing, but it's been precious on this voyage. The hide traps some warmth. The wool provides insulation. There's room for 2 men inside one bag, and many of the crew members share them. You curl up in your bag, pulling whatever covering you have around yourself. You might have a wool cloak. You might have an extra piece of fabric someone has lent you. You might have almost nothing. It depends on your luck and your status. The ship makes different sounds at night without. The constant chanting and splashing of rowing, you hear things more acutely. The creaking of the wood, constant, ever present. The wood is always adjusting, always expressing the strain of holding the ship together against the forces of wind and wave. The water. You can hear it much more clearly now. Sometimes it's gentle, lapping against the hull almost peacefully. Other times it's aggressive, waves crashing against the sides, sending spray over the deck. The breathing of the other men. There are 60 of them sleeping in proximity to you. You hear their snores. You hear their coughs. You hear the occasional murmur, someone talking in their sleep, maybe calling out a name, or remembering a moment from another life. This is the time when fear becomes difficult to suppress. During the day, you're busy. Your mind is occupied with work, with rhythm, with practical concerns. But at night, lying on a hard deck, surrounded by darkness and the sounds of the sea, your mind wanders to dangerous places. What if the ship sinks? What if a storm comes? What if you're lost and everyone dies out here? What if you never see land again? What if, what if, what if the men around you are experiencing the same fears? Some of them whisper about home. Some of them pray quietly. Some of them sing very softly, not work songs now, but something more personal. Songs about home, about love, about the gods. There's a strange camaraderie in this shared fear. Everyone on the ship understands the reality of the situation. Everyone knows that you're dependent on the captain's navigation, on the ship's construction, on luck, and the favor of the gods. Everyone knows that any number of things could go wrong, and everyone sleeps anyway, because what else is there to do? In the modern world, nighttime is when you retreat to safety, you go inside. You lock the doors. You know that nothing too serious can happen to you in the night. On a Viking ship, nighttime is when you're most vulnerable. The ship doesn't stop moving. The ocean doesn't take the night off. Danger is constant, and darkness makes it feel even more threatening. And yet, the Vikings normalized this. Night after night, they slept on exposed decks, trusting in their ship, trusting in their crew, trusting in their gods. They didn't have the option to be afraid. So, over time, they simply accepted the fear as part of existence. One of the most profound discoveries you can make on a Viking ship is this: human beings are capable of incredible psychological resilience. We can adapt to things we thought would break us. We can face our fears every single night and still wake up and continue with our lives. The Vikings didn't have therapists to help them process their nighttime anxieties. They didn't have medication to help them sleep. They had each other, stories, faith, and the fundamental human capacity to accept that which cannot be changed. Somewhere in the middle of the night, or perhaps in those first moments before dawn, a sound begins. It's not alarming. It's quiet, almost reverent. One of the men is praying, softly, barely audibly. He's speaking to the gods. On a Viking ship, faith is not optional. Faith is survival. The men on this ship believe in gods who are active, present, powerful, not distant deities that concern themselves with philosophical matters. These are gods who directly impact whether the ship reaches land, whether the crew eats, whether anyone dies in a storm. There is Odin, the All-Father. He's the god of war, of wisdom, of poetry, of death. He's the God who sacrificed his own eye for knowledge. He's the God who commands respect because he demands sacrifice. If the Vikings succeed in great deeds, if they find new lands and wealth, it's through Odin's favor. There is Thor, the god of thunder, of strength, of protection. He carries a hammer and rides through the sky in a chariot drawn by goats. He's the god most directly relevant to sailors. He controls the storms. He controls the weather. A prayer to Thor is a prayer for protection against the sea. There is Freya, the goddess of love, of fertility, of battle. She's the one who chooses warriors for her hall, the Folkvanger. There's a strange comfort in this belief, the idea that a powerful goddess is selecting worthy warriors, watching over them. And there is Loki, the trickster, the chaos god. He can't be trusted. He can't be prayed to for protection. But acknowledging his existence, his power, is necessary. He might interfere, he might cause disaster, or he might simply observe with his strange, knowing smile. Many of the men wear amulets or charms. a small wooden or stone figure of Thor's hammer, a carved symbol associated with one of the gods. These are worn around the neck, or tucked into a pocket, or clutched in a hand at night. They're not sophisticated religious items, they're practical, magical objects. They're insurance. They're proof that the wearer is taking the matter of divine protection seriously. Before important moments, before a particularly dangerous stretch of water, before a major storm, before a long voyage begins, there are rituals. The captain might pour out an offering of food or drink to the gods. The crew might repeat a prayer in unison. There might be a small sacrifice. Nothing dramatic, perhaps just a piece of meat thrown into the sea, an offering to the gods of the ocean. What's important to understand is that this isn't superstition exactly. It's not that the Vikings actually believe that a wooden carving will protect them. It's that the faith serves a psychological function. It provides meaning. It provides narrative. It provides hope. When you're on a ship in the middle of the ocean and you're cold and hungry and afraid, having gods to pray to provides something precious, a sense that you're not completely alone, a sense that greater powers might be looking out for you, a sense that your suffering might have meaning. The man praying quietly in the darkness isn't really expecting Thor to intervene and prevent a storm, but by praying, by acknowledging the gods, he's participating in a tradition that goes back generations. He's part of something larger than himself, and that matters. That helps. That makes the cold a little more bearable and the fear a little more manageable. In the modern world, most people try to solve their problems through practical means. If you're afraid, you research the statistics. You learn about climate, weather patterns, ship safety. You try to control your fear through information. On a Viking ship, this information isn't available. Weather prediction doesn't exist. There's no way to know what lies ahead. So, in the face of genuine uncertainty, the Vikings turned to faith. They turned to narratives that explained the world and their place in it. Interestingly, this faith based approach to uncertainty might actually be more psychologically healthy than our modern approach. We can know all the statistics and still be anxious. The Vikings knew nothing, and they managed to remain functional through faith. One of the most important lessons a Viking ship can teach us is this: meaning matters more than comfort. The Vikings weren't comfortable. They would never be comfortable, but they found meaning in their journey, meaning in their faith, meaning in their participation in a great human endeavor. By doing this, they made their discomfort bearable. They made their fear manageable. They made their lives worth living, even under the most difficult circumstances. When the work is done and the evening has settled in, there's one thing that every crew member looks forward to: enough to chew properly, and there's a small amount of butter, rancid probably, but still fat, still calories, precious calories. It's spread thin on the bread, just enough to add a little flavor and richness to an otherwise austere meal. The smell is not appetizing. The fish smells like salt and preservation. The bread smells musty, like it's been stored in damp conditions. The butter smells slightly off, not rotten exactly, but definitely not fresh. But to your current self, cold, tired, and hungry, these smells are almost divine. They promise energy. They promise that you might survive another day. The sounds of men eating. It's not quiet or orderly. It's the sound of hungry men consuming food, hard bread being broken, teeth working on tough fish, the occasional grunt of satisfaction, someone coughing as a piece of bread goes down the wrong way. The ship's rhythm continues underneath. The constant creak and sway, the sound of water against the hull, the distant cry of a seabird. The bread is hard, almost impossibly hard. When you hold it, you're holding something that requires genuine effort to break. When you finally get a piece into your mouth, it's like chewing leather. You have to work at it, have to soften it with saliva, have to put real effort into breaking it down enough to swallow. The fish is flaky when you get it apart, but it's also dense. It's salty, extremely salty. It makes you thirsty, which is why it's paired with the rationed water. The fat in the butter coats your mouth slightly, making everything feel a bit more satisfying, even though the food itself is quite plain. Hunger. That's the baseline emotion here. A constant, low level hunger that never quite goes away. You eat. You feel briefly satisfied. Then, within a few hours, the hunger returns. There's also a strange kind of gratitude. You're grateful that there is food. You're grateful that the captain maintains supplies well enough that everyone eats something day. You're grateful that you're not starving. And underneath both of those, there's something like resignation. This is what you eat. This is what everyone eats. This is how it works. Get used to it. In the modern world, breakfast is something people spend time thinking about. What will I have? How will I prepare it? Will I go out for breakfast or eat at home? The choices are almost overwhelming. On a Viking ship, breakfast is this: hard bread and hard fish and a little bit of butter. Every single morning. There are no choices. There is no deliberation. There is only this. People today often complain about breakfast. They're bored with their cereal. They want something more interesting. On a ship in the year 1000, the question isn't, is this interesting? The question is this enough calories to keep me alive? Food on a Viking ship serves one purpose and one purpose only. It's not about flavor. It's not about enjoyment. It's about raw calories in a form that won't spoil during weeks at sea. And the remarkable thing is that this simple food actually works. It doesn't make people sick very often. The salt preserves the fish. The dryness of the bread keeps it from molding. And somehow, men who eat this diet day after day remain healthy enough to row a ship across entire oceans. Stories. An older man, perhaps the captain, perhaps just the oldest and wisest of the crew, sits down and he begins to speak. The sagas that are told on Viking ships are ancient. Some of them have been passed down for generations. They might be about gods. They might be about legendary heroes of the past. They might be about great deeds and great journeys. What they are not is entertaining in the modern sense. They don't have plot twists. They're not designed to surprise or shock. They're not meant to be consumed quickly and then forgotten. Instead, they're meant to be absorbed. They're meant to become part of you. They're meant to provide narrative structure to existence. They're meant to explain what it means to be a Viking, what it means to be brave, what it means to be loyal, what it means to be worthy. Let's imagine the storyteller begins with a saga about Ragnarok, the end of the world. In this narrative, the world will eventually end. The giants will march against the gods. Odin will be defeated by the great wolf Fenrir. Thor will slay the world's serpent, but will be killed by its poison. The sun will disappear from the sky. The earth will sink into the sea. But, and this is the crucial part, after the end, there will be a new beginning. The earth will rise from the water. New life will appear. New gods will rule. And in Valhalla, the greatest warriors, those who died in battle and earned a place in the Hall of Heroes, will be resurrected to fight one final battle against the forces of chaos. On a ship in the middle of the ocean, facing the very real possibility of death. This story is profound. It tells you that endings are not final. It tells you that death, even death at sea, might be a beginning. It tells you that your suffering, your struggle, your potential death. These things might matter on a cosmic scale. More practically, it tells you that if you die with honor, if you die as a warrior, even if you're just a humble sailor, you might be chosen for Valhalla. You might be selected by the gods for something greater. This belief actually changes behavior. It changes the way men face danger. It changes the way they accept hardship. It changes the way they approach death. As the storyteller speaks, the crew quiets. Everyone is listening, not because they're required to, but because they want to, because these stories feed something essential in the human spirit. The voice of the storyteller is calm, measured. He's not trying to entertain. He's not using dramatic pauses or changing his tone for effect. He's simply telling the story as he knows it, as his grandfather told it, as his grandfather's grandfather told it. As the story continues, you feel yourself being transported. The cold of the ship fades a bit. The fear seems a little more manageable. You're no longer just a frightened sailor on a ship. You're part of a vast tradition of warriors and heroes. You're part of a narrative that extends back through generations and forward into eternity. In the modern world, we use stories as entertainment. We watch movies. We read books. We consume stories quickly and then move on to the next one. Stories are disposable, they're products. On a Viking ship, stories are medicine, they're philosophy, they're religion, they're the glue that holds a community together. A good storyteller on a Viking ship is more important than a good navigator. Stories keep people alive. The Vikings understood something we've largely forgotten. Narrative is essential to human survival. We don't live by facts alone. We live by the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're doing, and why it matters. A man on a Viking ship is not just a rower, he's a warrior. He's part of a saga. He's potentially a hero in a story that will be told for generations. This narrative transforms his experience. It makes it meaningful. It makes it bearable. But stories and faith, however powerful they are, cannot prevent all disaster. The sea is indifferent to human narrative. The sea is indifferent to gods and sagas and hope. The sea simply is. And sometimes the sea reminds you of this fact with overwhelming force. The morning sky is darker than usual. The wind, which has been variable, becomes more organized. It starts to blow consistently from one direction with increasing force. The captain watches carefully. He's seen storms before. He knows the signs. By afternoon, he gives orders. The sail is brought down carefully. The oars are positioned. Everything that can be secured is secured. Loose items are thrown overboard. There's no room for anything that isn't essential. Every item that might shift or fall becomes a potential weapon against the crew. The captain orders everyone to secure themselves to the ship in some way. There are ropes. Men tie themselves to the benches, to the mast, to anything fixed. If the ship tips or heaves dramatically, they don't want to be thrown into the ocean. The storm doesn't so much arrive as overwhelm. The waves are enormous, much larger than you thought possible. The ship, which normally sits relatively low in the water, is picked up by a wave and heaved upward. For a disorienting moment, you feel almost weightless. Then the ship crashes down into the trough of the wave, and the impact sends a shock through your entire body. The wind is not steady, it gusts and changes direction. The ship pitches and yaws. The wooden structure, which you've trusted for weeks, is creaking in ways that sound absolutely ominous. You genuinely wonder if the ship is about to splinter. Men are yelling orders. The water is everywhere. Spray continuously washes over the deck, soaking everyone instantly. The temperature seems to drop further, Though you know that's partly psychological, you're heaving constantly, moving between terror and resignation, back and forth. This is what you signed on for, you remind yourself. This is what happens on ships. This is the price of sailing the bread ocean. Somewhere in the chaos, a man is swept away. You don't really see it clearly. There's just one moment where someone is on the deck, tied to a rope, and the next moment, the rope has broken, or the tie point has failed, and the man is gone. Gone into the water, gone into the chaos of the storm. There's no time for mourning. There's no time to process what happened. The storm is still raging. The ship is still in danger. Everyone has to focus on survival. Later, after hours that feel like days, the storm passes. The sky begins to clear. The waves begin to subside. The immediate danger is over. And the crew assesses. One man is missing. One man is dead. The captain says a few words. Nothing elaborate. Death at sea is common enough that it doesn't warrant extensive ceremony. The man is gone. May the gods take him. May he find his way to Valhalla. May he be remembered. Then life continues. The sail is raised. The oars are put back into the water. The ship continues toward its destination. This is perhaps the most shocking thing about death on a Viking ship, how quickly it must be accepted and moved past. There's no time for grieving. There's no time for complex emotions. There's only the continuation, only the next stroke of the oars, only the endless work of staying alive. Disease is perhaps more common than dramatic deaths. A man develops a cough that won't go away. Within days, he's unable to work. Within a week, he's burning with fever. His breathing becomes labored. He stops responding to things. And then, one morning, he simply doesn't wake up. The body is wrapped in cloth. If there's canvas to spare, it might be used. If not, any cloth will do. A rock is tied to the feet, and then the body is committed to the sea. The work of the ship doesn't stop. The man who was sick and then dead had a place on a rowing bench. Someone else takes his place. The rhythm continues. In the modern world, we've worked very hard to do so. Eliminate death from everyday experience. We hide death. We institutionalize it. We pretend that it's not a normal part of life. On a Viking ship, death is immediate and constant. It's part of the job. It's something that everyone who joins a crew understands might happen at any moment. And perhaps because of this acceptance, the Vikings were less psychologically devastated by it than we might expect. Death was sad. It was a loss. But it wasn't a shock. It wasn't something that seemed to violate the natural order of things. The men learned to live with loss. They learned that you continue, you do your job, you survive, you keep the ship moving forward. This kind of acceptance is almost impossible for modern people to understand. We want to prevent death. We want to hide it. We want to pretend that, with enough medicine and technology, we can avoid it. The Vikings knew better. They knew that death was part of the deal, and so they lived accordingly. Week after week, the ship continues westward. The men don't openly complain. Complaining serves no purpose on a ship, but you can feel the fatigue settling in. The cold has become so familiar that you've almost forgotten what warmth feels like. The food remains monotonously the same. The routine of rowing and sleeping and rowing again becomes so ingrained that you can barely remember life before the ship. And yet there's one thing that keeps people going, one thought that prevents complete despair. Vinland, the land of vines, the land of grapes, the land where forests are so thick and abundant that you can barely walk through them, the land where the climate is warm enough to grow things, the land where a man can claim territory and build a farm and create a future. Vinland is not mere legend. Vinland is real. Men on this ship, or men they know, have been there. They've seen it. They've described it in detail. Vinland exists, but Vinland is also mythologized. In the telling and retelling, in the translation from one language to another, in the way stories change as they pass through the years, Vinland has become almost fantastical. It's become a promise of everything that the harsh north cannot offer. The practical reality is that Vinland offers land, territory. In Scandinavia, the good farmland is claimed, the population is growing. Young men have few prospects, but in Vinland, in this new world across the ocean, there is available land. There is the possibility of building something new. There is the possibility of becoming something more than a landless sailor. This is the promise that brings men onto ships. This is the dream that sustains them when the cold becomes unbearable. But Vinland is more than just economic opportunity. Vinland is a fantasy. It's a place where things are better, where the sun is warm, where food is abundant, where the future is possible. You can't actually see Vinland yet. You might not see it for weeks more. The ship is diffused, still months away from crossing the Atlantic and reaching the northern coast of North America. But you can imagine it. You can dream about it. And in dreams of Vinland, the cold of the ship becomes more bearable. The hunger becomes more manageable. The fear becomes almost acceptable because it's in service of reaching this promised land. One evening, a man who has been to Vinland before begins to describe it. He talks about forests that are impossibly tall, trees larger than any tree in Scandinavia, trees that make you feel small just by being near them. He talks about grapes, actual grapes growing wild on vines, sweet and abundant. He talks about the smell of them, the taste of them. He talks about water, fresh, clean, running water from streams and rivers, not the carefully rationed barrel water of the ship, not the brackish water that tastes of salt and thyme, real water. He talks about the indigenous people, neither hostile nor particularly friendly, just different. They have their own culture, their own way of doing things. There's the possibility of trade, there's the possibility of coexistence. And he talks about the land itself, the possibility of claiming property, of building a home, of creating a farm that could feed a family for generations. As he speaks, the men on the deck listen with an intensity that borders on hunger. This is what they're sailing for. This is what they're enduring the cold and the fear and the loss of their friends for. Vinland is the reason they're here. The reality of Vinland is not quite as perfect as the dream. The land is raw and undeveloped. The indigenous people are not always welcoming. The winters are harsh. Building a settlement is brutally difficult work. Many of the Norse settlements in Vinland will eventually be abandoned. But on a Viking ship, surrounded by cold and uncertainty, none of that matters. What matters is the dream. What matters is the possibility. What matters is the belief that there is somewhere better, somewhere you could go, somewhere that represents hope. One of the greatest discoveries of the Viking Age was not material. It was not land or riches or power. It was the discovery that there was more to the world than what people knew. There was more beyond the horizon. There was a place you could sail to, a place you could build a life. This discovery, this possibility, this dream, it was transformative. It changed the way people saw themselves and their place in the world. It gave them hope when hope seemed impossible. And hope, it turns out, is as necessary as water. Hope is as important as food. Hope is what keeps people alive when logic suggests they should already be dead. Month after month of rowing and sailing, month after month of cold and hunger and fear. And then, one morning, something changes. The men can feel it before they can see it. The smell of the air is different. The quality of the light is different. The very rhythm of the water beneath the ship seems to shift. There is land somewhere close. The captain is scanning the horizon constantly now. He's looking for birds. In the Viking Age, before compasses, before modern navigation, sailors used birds as guides. When land is near, birds appear. The captain knows this. Everyone knows this. And then, one afternoon, someone shouts, "There is a bird flying over the water." Not one of the seabirds that occasionally range far from shore, but a land bird, a bird that wouldn't be this far from shore unless shore was close. The crew's mood shifts immediately. Suddenly, there's energy. Suddenly, there's urgency. The rowing becomes stronger, more coordinated. The men are no longer just pulling through water, they're pulling toward something. They're pulling toward home, or toward what will become home. The next morning, before even the sun has fully risen, someone shouts again, "Land!" There is land on the horizon. At first, it's just a dark line, just a smudge against the sky that could almost be a trick of the light or the shadow of a cloud. But as the ship approaches, the shape becomes clearer. It's definitely land. It's definitely real. There is a collective moment of silence. 60 men who have been living in constant proximity for weeks, who have been suffering together, who have been afraid together. 60 men are unified in a single moment of profound relief. You did it. You survived. You reached the other side. As the ship approaches the coast, the captain orders the oars to be raised. For the first time in weeks, the rowing stops. The ship moves forward under sail alone, guided by the captain's knowledge of the coast. The crew works to bring the ship into shallow water. There are rocks to avoid. There are currents to navigate. But finally, incredibly, the ship's hull touches bottom. The ship is grounded. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to sink. It's not going to be swept back out to sea. It has, against all odds, made it. Men are moving now. No one has ordered them to move. They're simply standing, gathering their possessions, preparing to disembark. Some are crying, some are shaking. Some are just standing, as if to confirm that it's real, that land is actually solid beneath their feet. The moment you step onto land is extraordinary. Your legs remember what solid ground is. Your feet adjust to a surface that isn't moving. Your equilibrium, which has been affected by weeks of ship motion, begins to recalibrate. You're wobbly. You might fall, but you're alive. You're here. You made it. The other men are moving around you. Some are kneeling and pressing their foreheads to the ground, a gesture of thanks to the gods, probably, though no one really specifies. Some are just standing with their eyes closed, breathing the smell of land and forest and earth. The captain moves among you, checking on the crew. Is anyone injured beyond repair? Is anyone too sick to continue? Did anyone not survive the journey? One man is base, missing, you realize. He was swept away in a storm weeks ago. You didn't even know him very well, but he should be here now. He should be feeling this moment. He should be experiencing the victory of having made it. But he's not. He's in the ocean, somewhere between here and there, part of a vast body of water that swallowed him and will never give him back. You acknowledge this loss silently, then move on. There's work to do. There's a settlement to build. There's a life to start in this new land. In the modern world, when we arrive somewhere, We know we've arrived. We have maps. We have GPS. We have flight attendants telling us we're on the ground. For a Viking sailor, arrival is subtle and gradual. It happens over days as land becomes closer and more real. It happens when you smell forest instead of salt. It happens when you feel solid ground beneath your feet. And the relief is profound in a way that modern travel doesn't usually allow. You didn't just go somewhere. You survived, you endured. You made it across an impossible distance using only human strength, skill, and hope. What's remarkable about the Vikings is not that they were stronger than us, or braver than us, or more skilled than us. What's remarkable is that they were human, exactly as human as we are, and they did this anyway. They were cold. They were afraid. They made mistakes. They lost people they cared about. They got in the ships. They rowed across oceans. They discovered new lands. They remind us of something we've largely forgotten, that human beings are capable of far more than we think, that endurance is possible, that hope is real, that even in the most difficult circumstances, it's possible to survive and even to thrive. We've spent this journey on a Viking ship. We've experienced what it was like to wake on a hard deck. We've felt the cold. We've tasted the food. We've experienced the fear and the hope that kept these men alive. What have we learned? We've learned that comfort is not necessary for survival. We've learned that fear becomes manageable when it's normalized and when you have a community sharing it. We've learned that meaning, whether provided by stories, by faith, by dreams of a better place, is essential to human survival. Without meaning, we cannot endure hardship. We've learned that human beings are more resilient than we think, that we can adapt to circumstances that seem impossible, that we can find courage in the presence of genuine danger. We've learned that community matters profoundly. 60 men working together, rowing in unison, sharing food and space and fear. They become something more than individual men. They become an organism. They become a crew, and that collective identity is what keeps them alive. The Vikings understood something that we in the modern world have largely lost, that life is not primarily about comfort or convenience. Life is about challenge and growth and the expansion of human possibility. They understood that the things that make us uncomfortable often also make us strong. They understood that fear, when faced directly and repeatedly, becomes manageable. They understood that community is not optional but essential. They understood that death is not something to be hidden or denied, but something to be accepted as part of existence. And in accepting death, they became free to live more fully. These are not comfortable truths. These are not truths that our consumer culture wants us to understand, but they are true nonetheless. As you drift towards sleep now, imagine yourself on the shore of Vinland. You can feel solid earth beneath your feet. The smell of forest is in the air. The cold of the ship is becoming a memory. You made it. Against all odds, despite fear and cold and hunger, despite loss and uncertainty, you survived. You crossed an ocean. The Vikings did this. Ordinary men, not heroes, men with fears and doubts, men who made mistakes, men who lost people. They loved, and yet they did it. They discovered a new world. They expanded the boundaries of the known world. What might you accomplish? What might you survive? What might you discover about yourself if you were willing to endure the journey? These are questions for another time. For now, let yourself rest. Let your breathing slow. Let the rhythm of waves, real or imagined, carry you towards sleep. You are safe. You are warm. You are on solid ground. Everything the Vikings endured, you don't have to endure, but you can honor their memory by understanding what they accomplished and what it cost them. Sleep now. Dream of distant lands and new beginnings. Dream of the courage it takes to sail beyond the horizon. Dream of the strength that exists within you, waiting to be discovered. Tomorrow, you can think about the Vikings. Tomorrow, you can process what you've learned. But tonight, sleep. Let your mind and body rest. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for listening to the story of the Vikings. Thank you for allowing yourself to imagine a life so different from your own. Subscribe if you found this journey meaningful. Leave a comment and tell me what part of the Viking story resonated with you most. What would you have done on that ship? What would have been your greatest fear? What would have been your greatest hope? Until tomorrow, rest well, sleep peacefully. Know that you are exactly where you need to be, in warmth, in safety, in a world transformed by the courage of people who came before you. Good night.